Every place has its own special history. Using a number of different methods, we can come to understand how a place has changed and developed over the years, and uncover clues, mysteries, and those curious details which may tell us something of the lives of the people who lived there. Eardisland is a very ancient rural village, which is mentioned in the Domesday Book, written in 1086. It nestles around the twisting River Arrow in the peaceful Herefordshire countryside. It's situated close to the Welsh border and must have witnessed much conflict between the Saxons and Celts. A group of children from the village of Eardisland are about to make a tour of the various sites of interest. They know the people they will meet, but want to know more about the history that surrounds them. I will accompany the children as their guide and will help supervise their activities. Observation is a simple method used to establish the age of a building, but care does need to be taken. Now, there's one more building I want you to look at while we're looking around the village. Is this one just here? If you move around to the front of this and you tell me what you think it looks like. Dovecot. Looks like another dovecot, doesn't it? Looks just like the black and white buildings we've been looking at in the rest of the village that are 400 years old. The thing about this building is it's absolutely brand new. It's made to look like a dovecot, but in actual fact, it houses the cesspit that is there for all these houses that's been newly built around it. Notice the number of beams that are used. Where many can be seen, it may indicate that the original owner was very wealthy and wanted to impress people by using lots of expensive timber. Look at the shapes of the windows, small panes of glass, the types of doors. Look at the chimneys and roofs. They are all clues as to the age of the building and of its use. The children divide into smaller groups to undertake their investigations and talk to local people to see what they can discover about the history of the village. 3 of the group have been allotted to find out about the dovecot, and I've arranged a meeting with Chris Walland, who has specialist knowledge about its history. It had fallen into disrepair.
The dovecot, for instance, is brick built in the form of a square tower with 4 gables, 2 separate entrances, and 2 of the windows are original, and the roof is made of handmade clay tiles.
Although built as a dovecot in around 1700, the ground floor was used as a girls' school in the Victorian period, about 150 years ago. According to an old document which has been uncovered, we found that the teacher was paid only about £1 a month. It's clear that the function of this building has changed greatly over the years. It now serves as a tourist attraction and information centre.
This is a dovecot or pigeon loft built for about 900 pigeons. And when the Normans came in 1066, they encouraged lords of the manor to build pigeon houses. And even 100 years ago, there were strict penalties for people who stole or killed the pigeons.
Why was that?
Well, they were an important source of food and kept strictly for the lord of the manor and his family. And there are reports that in 1471 the Earl of Warwick and his family ate over 4,000 pigeons at one sitting.
The River Arrow is one of the main reasons why a settlement was established here in ancient times. And the mill, seen here in the 1920s, was one of the most important industries for local people.
The river is important for the village. It's been used in years gone by to drive the 3 mills that was in the village, to grind corn, to make flour and animal feeds. And also, it was used for the tannery that was in the village, to prepare the leather.
Brian directs the boys to the house of Ray Phillips. Here they have an opportunity to ask about the mill and his family's association with it.
The mill was built about 1598, just after the time of the Spanish Armada, by the Vaughan family. And it gets its water from the River Arrow about half a mile upstream. Now in 1704, one of my ancestors purchased this mill for a lease of 500 years for just £105. And 3 generations of my family lived here and operated the mill. You'll see that the water still runs underneath the house that's been built over where the mill used to be, because the mill burned down about 1965.
Even in this small village of 400 people, a school was set up in the 17th century. It closed down in about 1825 when a new school was built and is now a private house.
Hello, boys.
Hello. Can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
How old is this house?
It was built in 1652 after a gentleman by the name of William Whittington left a sum of money in his will to build a school.
Why was it called the grammar school?
Probably because the local vicar was also the headmaster, and he taught Latin grammar, so we think that's how it got the name grammar school.
What were the teachers like?
In those days they were very, very strict, and for any boys that were naughty in class or didn't do their homework, they had a special punishment. Come on, I'll show you. There we are. Would you like to try them?
Yes, please.
See, one hand goes in there.
The whipping post shows us that the teachers dealt very severely with children in the days when this was a school. Not all buildings need to be ancient to be historic. This AA box, dating from the 1920s, is thought to be unique, possibly the only one of its kind left in the country.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
Where's this building?
It's an AA box which contained a telephone that motorists could use to get help if they had problems.
Is it rare?
Very, very rare. Very few of them left now. Built in the early 1920s.
Can we look inside?
Of course you can, yes, gladly.
How did it get here?
Well, it was replaced in the early 1960s with a more modern little tiny telephone. And it was brought down and stood in my father's garden for about 40 years and gradually getting worse. And we've restored it now, got it back as it was, almost original, and put it on the show so everybody can see it and what it was used for.
Thank you.
That's all right. Pleasure.
Bryony and Richard have been allocated an unusual site to investigate, and local resident Chris is on hand to help out.
Is this a pond?
No, it's a moat, and it goes all the way round this mound in the middle, where we think there was some sort of castle or stockade in Saxon and Norman times, where people would shelter in time of danger.
How did they get across?
Well, over there's a sort of causeway which is now below the level of the water, but earlier it was raised up and people could walk across.
Have you found anything interesting in the mill?
We have. This is one of the things we've found. We don't really quite know what it is, so we're going to go to an expert to get him to look at it. We think it might be a metal foot off some sort of cooking pot, but we're not sure.
From the top of the church tower, it's possible to see the moated mound on which a castle might once have stood. At the church, I've arranged for Sam and Luke to meet George, who is investigating the heraldry depicted in the windows.
Excuse me, how old is this church?
It's about 800 years old, and we know that because you see those 3 windows? The experts tell us that that type of window was originally made around the year 1200.
What are the shields for up on the window?
Most of the heraldic shields relate to prominent local families, and they are there to commemorate certain members of them. The top one relates to the family which bought Burton Court in 1863.
The wall monuments can also tell a story and need to be investigated. This one to the Clews family at Burton Court reminds us there's a strong connection between the families who were lords of the manor in the 19th century and village life. The children will visit Burton Court later. A stone-built church like this one is often the oldest building in any parish, and frequently one of the tallest, suggesting it was the most important when it was built. In the churchyard, Graham is undertaking an unusual exploration.
When it's very difficult to read the gravestone, like this one, the best thing to do is to get a mirror and just shine the mirror across the stone itself. The churchyard has a whole lot of information on the tombstones about the people and where they lived and how old they were, and people come to the graveyard to find out as much information about the parish history as possible, because a lot of it's preserved on the tombstones here.
L.
Now, this is just a tube, nothing in it, but if we hold it on the letters, like that, tell me what you see down there. And this is the gravestone of William Ricketts. Sometimes the names are difficult to read, and Ricketts can look like Richard, but that's definitely Ricketts of Down Way, who died in January 2nd, 1896, aged 76 years. Now that makes him born in 1820, and if you were to go to the record office in Hereford, you would find a copy of his birth certificate for 1820, and you'd also find his death certificate for 1896, because in the record, that one's easy. We'll get back to it later on. I think this one's fairly easy too, isn't it? This is the gravestone of Tom Wood and his two wives. And he, if you look round the corner there, look, what was he?
He was the headmaster of Eardisland School for 39 years.
Now, if you go round to the local school itself, you'll find a great deal more about him there. It's not a school anymore, it's the village hall, just a little way down that way.
He was a very good teacher, but he was very strict, and he wasn't afraid to use a cane if you were naughty.
Well, he was all right if you behaved yourself, but if you didn't, you had to stick. Or sent up on the cricket pitch to push the roller like I had to go sometimes.
Megan and Bill are among the last of the generation who went to school here. They're sometimes called key informants, because they have first-hand knowledge of the past, which may not be written down anywhere.
Your mother taught here anyway, didn't she?
Oh, yes, my mother taught here for 34 years. There were 102 in the days of my mother and Mr. Wood, but when it closed in 1979, there were only 12 left. That's why they had to close the school. We came to school when we were 5 in those days, and when we were about 7, we went into what we called the big room, which was the room where Mr. Wood taught.
Jill and Paddy are also key informants who have special knowledge about life in the school.
Did you used to go to school here?
Yes, I went to school here in the 1940s and 50s.
Were the teachers as strict as Tommy Wood's?
No, not most of them. Some were quite strict, but some were very nice.
My granddad told me that the toilets were outside.
Paddy will tell you about those.
Yes, and it was very cold going out there sometimes too. But you know, they had to go in buckets, not nice modern toilets. And it was a long shed with a row of buckets and a seat on top with holes cut in where they sat. And it was open at the back, the shed, for emptying the buckets. And you know what the naughty boys used to do? They used to pick stinging nettles and run along the back of the shed, stinging the little girls' bare bums. Now, do you think they got into trouble over that?
Yeah.
Bet they did.
The children have heard a lot about the manor house called Burton Court and have seen the memorials to the Clues family in the church. Now they're coming to visit the house and its grounds to see what more they can discover.
Can you tell us anything interesting about Burton Court?
The word Burton is supposed to derive from the Saxon words bure and tun, meaning fortified dwelling place. It is probable that this site has been inhabited for at least 2,000 years. The local archaeology people are hoping to clarify that one way or the other.
What are you doing down there?
We're being detectives. We're looking for clues. And the clues are to tell us whether people might have lived on here, on this mound, before they went to live down in the hall.
Have you found anything yet?
Well, we have. We found some clues. Certainly we have. They're little bits of medieval pottery. And this has come out of the ground for the first time since about the year 1200.
And what are those white tickets?
Well, when you do an excavation, you have to do it very carefully because we can never ever put it back together again. So we record everything, and these record the layers as we go down down the trench.
Every bucket of soil has to be sieved in case something is missed. Sometimes things are found which even the diggers have not spotted. The aim of the excavation is to find out about the history of the manor, which goes back to the time of William the Conqueror. The work examines what's beneath the ground, as well as the architecture of the house itself and its landscape, so that its history can be understood. It's very important to remember that to do any work of this kind, it's essential to have the permission of the landowner, and often to have the help of experts to guide the project, since otherwise damage could be done.
Do it this way, look. Across it, like this. Like that.
A field survey is in progress in front of Burton Court using geophysics equipment which Richard is looking into with Ed and Tim, who is a professional archaeologist.
This is a resistivity meter, and what we're doing is a geophysics survey of this area of lawn, and this works by measuring the water in the soil and measuring the resistance to electricity. So where we have the remains of a pit or a ditch or a filled-in pond which still contains more moisture than the ground around it, the electricity will flow through the soil quite quickly and give us a low reading. But where we hit rock or stone, it'll give us a very high reading, and this draws a map underneath the ground. So here we are. This just gives you lots of little dots all over the place, but in a density that means that you can follow walls underneath the ground, and you can instantly see here and here we've got a line of dots, and across here perhaps there's another one, and there's a big square block in here which looks as though there's a lot of stonework. So what we've got here is a plan of the area that we've walked up and down with our survey instrument, and to the nearest metre it's showing what's beneath the soil down to a depth of about 1 metre.
Okay, Richard, follow me down the stairs.
Richard visits the cellars with Ed to see what evidence can be found out about the history of the manor house. By examining the different structures and features beneath Burton Court, it should be possible for experts to describe changes which have occurred over time to the architecture above.
Well, the importance of cellars is always been for preserving food, to keep it, as it is cold, it helps preserve food and the drink here. But historically, you can see these stones have been here for a long time, but these bricks are quite modern. So you can see it as we go down here as well.
What's that?
Oh, well, this is backfill from underneath the 14th century Great Hall. And then through into here, you see this old wall here as well. And into here, these walls and the floors here are strange because there's different patterns. So there's stone here.
Why is there coal?
That we don't know. See, it's a lot redder here as well. So it could be that it's wet. There could have been an very old well here. But that's one mystery which we don't know. We'll have to get more experts to examine it.
How deep's that well?
Oh, that well's very deep. Why don't you throw a stone in and we can count it? Three seconds. I would say that's over 100 feet. That's very deep. But the techniques for making wells hasn't changed for thousands of years, so it could predate the house.
But experts don't have all the answers to questions posed.
This is the book of photographs we've got.
Diane has an album of old photographs, and she's trying to find out where they were taken from in 1902. Then she can recreate the same scene again nearly 100 years later and see what changes have occurred. There may be changes in the height or loss of trees. There may also be changes in the architecture of a house or the way a garden looks.
And look at the line of where.
David Lovelace has made use of special computer software to overlay old maps and modern aerial photographs to see how the landscape has changed over time.
You look at that building there.
He has the tithe map of 1840 and placed over it aerial photographs taken in 1971 and 1995. He can then show the changes that have occurred. The outcome will enable more research to be undertaken to find out what has happened to buildings, when and why they disappeared, or when orchards or other trees were planted or removed.
We've got two of them left.
It is also possible to investigate the way field boundaries have changed over the last 150 years.
Only that one's left. You can see it's actually got bigger. So you can actually see how the trees have grown from 1971 to 1995 on this aerial photograph. And also how the buildings have changed. Look at the way they've expanded their buildings. And just here, wait, where was
Is
it?
that where I was doing geophysics?
Just about, yeah, I think so.
These are the little bits that you found.
When finds have been made, there are special procedures which must be followed in order to reach conclusions. Liz will show the children how the archaeologists go about their work away from the excavation.
And dry it on paper. Has to be very dry, so that when it's dry, we'll leave that one there, it can be marked with the code, which says Burton Court, 2001, Trench B, layer 105.
Yeah.
And then we have to record it in here, how many pieces we've found, and put it in the right section. You're doing a very important job, Holly. You're sketching in the artifacts that we've found. And that's very important because you can see more than photographs can see. But that's an important job. And when they're done, we put them into their sections, bones and pots. And when we've got lots of interesting things, we can make a display. Right, now when all those pieces have been washed and catalogued, sometimes we can stick them together and then see how big the rim is. And if we find out how big the rim is, and that one's
13, isn't it?
13, we can multiply that by 2. When you think of a saucepan that we use today, and that's one of my bigger saucepans, and look at it at the side of these huge pots, you realise that there's a great deal of difference. And if you put it on the rim chart, we can see that it's considerably smaller. They were cooking for a lot more people.
So here they are. We've got the results in the album.
Diane is showing Amy the results of the comparative photographs they took at Burton Court. And Amy has noticed some important similarities and differences.
Yeah, well, they're mainly the same, but there are a few differences. Some of the trees there and there have been taken away, and the big conservatory there has been knocked down to a smaller version. And also some of the chimneys have been taken away.
Every place in which people live, whether a city, suburb, town or village, has its own special history. Sometimes in our busy lives it can easily be taken for granted. Look at the different architecture in any street and you'll find fascinating clues about its past. It's important to check in the local record office to see if they have documents which will throw some light on the history of the place you are investigating. The record office holds thousands of important documents which people have donated and which are carefully filed and stored for research purposes. Sue Hubbard is in charge at Hereford. The children want to know a little more about the Ricketts family and Tom Wood, the school teacher, whose graves they found in the churchyard.
Now, who we got there? Is that William? You can see better than me.
Yeah, that's William.
Age 60?
Mm-hmm.
That's the right one then. Right, do you want to make some notes about him?
Okay.
Right, so that's William, 60 years old. He's a farmer, but he's only got 9 acres of land. And he hasn't got anybody working for him, poor man.
When did Tommy Woods first come to school?
Yeah. Well, there might be something in the school logbooks. If you give me the slip, the request slip, we'll have a look and see. I'll have to give you a cushion. And here's the logbook. Now, it was about 1900, I think, wasn't it? Oh, now, can you see his name there anywhere on that page?
There.
Right. Oh, yes, and there, look. There he is, T. Wood, certificated teacher. So that's when he started in the school, on September the 30th, 1901.
It's nice to see his handwriting.
Yes, it must be, after you've heard so much about him.
Yeah.
On Tom Wood's first day as headmaster, he writes, "There were only 50 present this morning, as a great many have not yet returned from hop picking." After a day inspecting the buildings and landscape and talking to local people and experts, it's essential to draw some conclusions. It's necessary to think back about what's been seen and what's been discovered. We're all looking forward to writing up our project with maps, photographs, drawings and details of interviews. It's important to remember that often more research is needed to find answers to the questions that we might ask. Successful research might take a long time, but it can be very rewarding. What have we learned from looking around the village today? What sort of changes have we seen? What sort of conclusions can we come to about all the different things that we've been looking at today?
The uses of buildings change over the years.
When people settle in places, there's a lot of continuity.
You can get a lot of information from talking to people and books. Some buildings are not as old as they look.
People come and go, but families still keep in contact where their ancestors used to live.
History is everywhere. It's all around us.
There's history we can see, history buried underground that we have to dig for.
And it all fits together like a big jigsaw.